Hi, everyone. Welcome today to the USU podcast. I am Julie. I am so grateful to be here as your host and supporter of you being your USU. You are going to love our guest today. You're in for a real treat. Let me tell you a little bit about him so that you have a sense of who you're about to meet. So to get started, today's fantastic guest is Ocean Robbins. Ocean is the CEO and co-founder of the 500,000 plus member of the Food Revolution Network, one of the largest communities of healthy eating advocates on the planet. He has held hundreds of live seminars and events that have touched millions of lives from 190 nations. He is also the author of the best-selling book, 31-Day Food Revolution. Ocean is founder and was the director of the nonprofit Yes, which has led transformational events for 650,000 leaders in 65 nations. He's a recipient of the National Jefferson Award for Outstanding Public Service, the Freedom's Flame Award, the Harman Wilkinson Award, and numerous other honors. Ocean has served as an adjunct professor for Chapman University and on the boards of Friends of the Earth, Creating Our Future, Tipping Point Network, Turning Tide Coalition, and many other organizations. Ocean's grandfather founded Baskin-Robbins, and his father, John Robbins, walked away from the family company and ice cream fortune to write bestsellers, including Diet for a New America, and to become a renowned health advocate. Now, Ocean is on a mission to transform the industrialized food culture into one that celebrates and supports healthy people and a healthy planet. And we're inviting you to join in the revolution. I am so honored to have you here today. I am super in alignment. I'm going to show everyone a copy of your book. Definitely, you guys get this 31-Day Food Revolution. It is fantastic. And Ocean, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Julie. And thanks for being in this conversation because, food can be the foundation of health or the foundation of disease. Yeah. And it's up to us which one takes place.
Absolutely.
And, I say, let's make it the foundation of health and let's make it a doorway towards a thriving life that we can love.
I love it. Can you talk a little bit about, it's interesting to me because, it's funny. I grew up on ice cream. I grew up in Boston, which is known as the ice cream capital for some bizarre reason in the North. I don't know. And so, I knew Baskin-Robbins and love ice cream, but today, frankly, I don't eat dairy. I don't eat a lot of inflammatory stuff. And that must have been an interesting place for your father, for you to kind of shift gears. Maybe just talk a little bit about your story, journey, how you got here.
Yeah, well, my dad grew up with an ice cream cone-shaped swimming pool in the backyard and 31 flavors of ice cream in the freezer because his father had founded Baskin-Robbins and along with his uncle, Bert Baskin. And my dad was groomed to one day join in running that company. But when he was in his early 20s, he was offered that chance and he said no. And he walked away from this path that was practically paved with gold and ice cream to follow his own, as we say in our family, rocky road.
Oh my gosh.
And, he ended up moving with my mom to this little island off the coast of British Columbia, Canada, where they, built a one-room log cabin and grew most of their own food. They practiced yoga and meditation for several hours a day. And of course, they named their kid Ocean. That would be me. They say they almost named me Kale.
Oh my gosh.
Kale was cool. And I'll tell you, on behalf of my future social life, I'm glad they took the more conservative route when they named their son. But we did eat a lot of kale and other veggies. And in time, my dad researched the food industry in which he'd grown up. Yeah. He ended up becoming a best-selling author with books like Diet for a New America. He inspired millions of people. The media called him the rebel without a cone. One of his readers ended up being my grandpa, Irvin Robbins, who had lost his brother-in-law and business partner, Bert Baskin, to heart attack at the age of 54. My grandpa was on a similar path, and he was on death's door, and his doctors handed him a copy of my dad's book and told him to read it, which amazingly my grandpa did. He gave up sugar, he gave up ice cream, he started eating a lot less processed foods and less animal products and more whole plant foods, and he got results. He reversed diabetes, he reversed heart disease, he reversed obesity, and he added 19 more healthy years to his life. So we really have seen in our family that the standard American diet leads to the standard American diseases. And we've seen what can happen when we make a change. And as you mentioned, I founded a nonprofit when I was a teenager, and we worked with young leaders in 65 countries around the planet. And as I traveled the globe, I saw that everybody eats and that what we're eating is having this massive impact. So after 20 years directing the nonprofit, I decided to focus on food. And that's when I launched Food Revolution Network in 2012. And we've been going ever since, mobilizing people all over the planet for healthy, ethical, sustainable food for all. And I have to tell you, I'm just more lit up than ever by this mission because I know what's at stake. I see the cost of the status quo. It's killing us. It's even killing our planet, some could say. Yeah. And I also see what's possible, that we can turn so much around, that, you know, suffering and feeling like crap and misery and chronic disease may be typical, but they don't have to be normal, and they don't have to be your fate. And I'm thrilled that in this place with our food choices, we actually have power. It's not just a place where you can make a difference. It's a place where you do make a difference 3 times a day. So let's make it a conscious one and a powerful one.
Wow. What a story. And to have a family member be affected by their diet at that level, and then to see that by changing their food, they could live 19 extra years is no joke. I mean, that's really right in front of your face. I'm sorry, I'm laughing at the fact that we could have been calling you Kale Robbins. I think Ocean works. I think that works. Yeah, I love it's a great name. Wow. I'm just, I'm thinking of people listening. Honestly, I got a master's degree in health and wellness coaching with nutrition as a aspect to it. And even studying someone who studied this, it was a little confusing at times. There's a lot of information out there. And I'm wondering, for those tuning in, like, maybe just to break it down, where to start. I know this is a big conversation, but I'm just thinking of those that are like, honestly, there's keto, there's vegan, there's this, there's that. Like, I should eat meat, I shouldn't eat meat, I should this. I have a philosophy, but I'd like to hear yours and what you recommend, and maybe just where people can start.
Sure, totally. Well, so one of the most debilitating problems we face in the world right now, in the health world, is confusion.
Yeah.
I mean, it's practically epidemic. 94% of the American public tries to eat healthy food or make healthy choices at least some of the time. But only 34% feel confident that they know what those healthy choices are. And many of those are probably misguided. Yeah. So let's get to what we know. There have been over 10,000 studies published in peer-reviewed medical journals. They all have different conclusions. You can find and cherry pick data that will point you in almost any direction you want. You can find experts telling you to eat nothing but grapefruits before breakfast, to eat nothing before noon, to fast, to graze all day long. You can find experts saying to eat no fat or very little fat, experts saying to eat 90% fat, low carb, high protein, low protein, you name it. There's somebody out there saying it. Drink more water, drink less water. It's all out there. Even kale is, advocated by most, but now we've got some folks saying, watch out for the goitrogens. We've got people saying, watch out for lectins. Never mind that studies show that people who eat tomatoes and legumes tend to live longer. We've got people making us afraid of them. Yeah. In the midst of all of this, guess what happens? The status quo tends to prevail. When people are confused, they go with the path of least resistance, which unfortunately in a toxic food culture is killing us. Yep. So here's the bottom line. When you look at the studies and you analyze them, most of them point in some pretty consistent directions. Serious researchers are not really all that confused about the optimal health and well-being of human beings. Now, there are some differences of perspective, but they're relatively minor. When we look at the blue zones, the places in the world where people have traditionally lived the longest and healthiest lives, as documented by Dan Buettner for National Geographic, we find that people in these regions all have certain characteristics in common. They all eat very little sugar and processed foods. Yeah. They all eat a low animal product diet. They all eat a lot of fruits and vegetables and whole foods. And actually, they all have legumes in their diet, interestingly enough. So, I think that it's pretty clear that the principles of a healthy diet are: we need to eat less sugar and processed junk. The average American is getting 1,400 chemicals in our food supply that have been added to our food, and eating 55 pounds of added sugar per year. We need to slash that way down. We need to eat less animal products, especially from factory farms.
Yeah.
In the blue zones, people get between 0 and 10% of calories from animal products. In the United States, we get 34%. And we need to eat more whole plant foods. The average American gets 6% of their calories from fruits and vegetables, and most of that is fruit juice. We need to get way more of our calories from real whole plant foods. Yeah. And when we make those changes, we can radically uplift the health of hundreds of millions of people overnight. We can slash our rates of heart disease by 80% or more, slash our rates of cancer by 40% or more, slash our rates of diabetes by 90% or more, particularly type 2 diabetes. We could slash our rates of obesity, which now afflicts, almost half of the population. We could cut that down to 5% or less by making the right food choices. And this is scientifically proven fact. So I think that we lose the big picture when we argue over the small stuff. Yeah, some people may do better with more fat or less fat, but we could all do less with less of certain kinds of fat. And if you're going to eat fat, then nuts and seeds and avocados, those are where you should be getting it from. Not from factory farm meat, not from bottled oils or, trans fats. I think that's pretty clear. And when we implement what we know, we can make massive difference. And then you can fine tune some of the distinctions because it's not the same for everybody. People may do better purely from a health perspective with a certain amount of wild fish in their diet. Others may not. Others, for ethical reasons, may say, I don't care. I don't want to participate in a fishing system that's strip mining our oceans or that's killing fish. Each of us has our own ethics, our own sense of conscience, our own sense of environmental concerns, our own health history, our own stage of life, metabolism, exercise level. There's a lot of factors that go into finding out what diet is right for you. And in 31 Day Food Revolution, we go into all this and we look at what is true for most people most of the time, and then how to figure out what's true for you right now, which is potentially a little bit different. But we can definitely learn from epidemiological studies that look at hundreds of thousands of people over decades and what they eat and how they live and whether or not they smoke and how much they exercise and what their health outcomes are. And when we do that, we see some very consistent results, eating vegetables and nuts and seeds and legumes, eating certain spices like turmeric and black pepper and garlic. These link to longer lifespan and more health span, and they're a good idea. And that's what I wanted to do in 31 Day Food Revolution, is really to cut through the confusion, clarify what we know and what's still points of discovery, and then help you apply what you're learning. Because at the end of the day, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, they do not care how much you know, how many podcasts you listen to, how many books you read. They care what you eat and how you live. And for a lot of people, the challenge isn't even just knowing what to do, it's doing what they know. And so this is all about getting you results.
Wow, that was awesome, and a lot of great info. Just letting people know, because sometimes I know listeners tune in while driving. We'll have a lot of this in the show notes, or you got to get your book because there's so much information in there. Speaking of so let's say, I was just talking to a dear friend who realized she just got caught up as a busy mom. She works, she has 3 kids. Frankly, she said to me, she's like, look, I just got into this rut where I was getting, foods that are prepared. I was doing the quick and easy. And she started to look at what was going on. Her husband wasn't feeling well, having digestion issues. She was feeling lethargic. Her kids were edgy. One might have had ADD, and realized she had listened to a physician talk about, gut health, and said, something's not right here. And I think there's a lot of people like that, where it just, you go through life, you're stressed, you're busy, you don't maybe know this information. Hopefully after today or after, studying and digging in, you will. But I guess the question is, do you have any thoughts, like a few places where people can start? If you were to list like the top 3 to 5 things you can do, so it's not like totally overwhelming, but what would you recommend are the most important things that you can do?
One of the most underlooked and important things you can do is to shop from a list. And to start planning ahead with your food shopping and your food life. So every week you can clear out the fridge, see what produce maybe didn't get used, and make a big pot of soup to get caught up so you're not wasting, because the average American family wastes $2,000 every year on food that literally just goes bad in the fridge. That doesn't have to happen to you. You can cut out food waste just by planning ahead and thinking cohesively about your menu plans. Cooking quantity, especially on the weekends or when you have a little time off work, so that you have extras to go during the week. It's wonderful to have to-go containers that you can grab any day that you need them, and they're ready to rock it for you. You can also have some of those be in the freezer, which can also be helpful. And then you can just pull them out when you want. Share extra with loved ones is also a nice thing. If you do happen to have more than you can eat because you bought a little too much last week, then go ahead and share it with a neighbor or a coworker or someone you love. Maybe they'll return the favor. Let food become a doorway of social connection and sharing between people. You know, if your harvest is good, if you're growing a garden and you got too many zucchinis, then share some with people you love, maybe some extra apples during harvest time. Whatever it is, the sense of sharing food builds bonds of social connection between people. I'm giving you more than one thing because these are just a bunch of the favorite things. And I think the reality is that you start where you are. In order to move from point A to point B, you have to understand what point A is, and you also have the vision of where you want to get to, and then you chart the course to make progress. And depending on where you are and what your goals are, the answer may be different for different people. If you're living alone or if you're living in a family, you've got a different equation and a different puzzle to figure out. But the bottom line is you want to clarify what your goals are, and you want to make some progress. Some people find it's helpful to clear away the worst offenders. You know, maybe there's a few items in your kitchen that you really want to stop eating. Here's a trick. If you find yourself on the wrong end of an empty bag of cookies a little too often, or an empty bag of chips, you may want to stop buying those cookies or chips. Get them out of the house. Because you know what? In a moment of temptation or weakness, when you're tired at the end of a long day, you may find yourself rummaging through the cupboards looking for the least healthy thing available. And if there's nothing unhealthy available, then guess what? You might snack on some celery and hummus instead of devouring a big old bag of packaged something or the other. And your body will thank you for that. And in time, your cravings will actually subside. It is possible to actually love foods that love you back. You know, the sense of craving foods that are unhealthy for you is actually an acquired habit, and it can be reversed.
Excellent what you just said. And I got to say, you know, so I'm hearing you start where you are, first of all, and get a sense of where do you want to go, get that goal in mind, something that you can actually say, okay, I've accomplished that. So maybe it's taking out packaged or processed food. Maybe it's adding more water. Maybe it's taking out sugar that's not natural, something like that, creating a list.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I just went through this where I took myself off sugar yet again. I like many of us, put myself in the category of a food addict, sugar addict, like literally addicted when I was eating it. And I found taking it out, there was a period of time I was a mess to be around. Like it was really interesting to watch my brain. It was like my brain on sugar is like my brain on drugs. I've never been on drugs, but it felt like what that would be.
Yeah.
And coming off of it was very intense. Yet now I don't crave it. It's out of my system. I don't crave it.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, there have actually been studies done with mice and rats where they're given, you know, cocaine and sugar, and even cocaine addicted rats, when they're given the option, will choose to push the lever to get the sugar hit over getting the cocaine hit. Yeah. Quite remarkable. It's a powerful thing, and it's not to be underestimated.
Yes.
And the processed food industry takes advantage of this by adding it to almost everything. Yes. I mean, it's in strange things. It's not just in donuts and candy. It's in pasta sauce. It's in canned soups. It's in frozen TV dinners. It's in salad dressings. It's in almost everything that you find that's processed. There's, whether it's sugar or high fructose corn syrup or dextrose, or there's over 100 different types of sweetener that are used in the food industry, but they all are essentially added sugars, and they all can spike your blood sugar or damage your liver, and they all keep you coming back for more. And that's part of what this is all about, is keeping that in place that keeps us hooked. Yes. And so a lot of what I focus on in 31-Day Food Revolution is actually the science of habit change. It's actually understanding how you can break free so that you become the author of your own food life. Because for a lot of people, the challenge isn't just knowing, hey, I need to eat better. Yeah. Yeah, everyone knows that. If we just knew we need to eat more vegetables and less sugar, we wouldn't have an obesity epidemic. Yeah. But the reality is most of us are actually acting out of accord with our own best interests day in and day out. And the reality is that we have to understand something about the neuroscience of addiction and how it's playing out with food. And more importantly, how you can break free.
Yes. So it's perfect. I was going to literally in my head, I'm thinking, okay, can you tell us, Ocean, what you've learned, what you've researched around tips in terms of habits, changing your habits, how to break free. Because I can hear someone listening like, all right, that's great. Like I've wanted to take out sugar for a long time. And this morning I had a pastry. So
Right.
it hasn't worked yet. So maybe you can share with us, what are some of the tips that you've learned?
Well, the best time to repair a roof is when it's sunny out. The best time to create sustainable habit change is not while you're in the throes of addiction or when you're stressed out and overwhelmed and exhausted at the end of a long week of work. It's usually when you're a little fresher or clearer, you have some space and you can really set it up. So, take some time on the weekend to read a book, sit down, think about it, and get things in place. What do I mean by things in place? I mean shopping lists. I mean menu plans. I mean that if you're struggling with food addiction, you actually may need to draw some bright lines. Some do not cross lines. An alcoholic can't have just one drink.
Yep.
So if you find that your mind is obsessed with food, if you find that you're having cravings for things that aren't good for you, that are more than just, oh, that sounds fun. There's like something compulsive in it. You know what I'm talking about. And if you ever have that experience, then there's some addiction operating, and some people have a lot of it. Some people are completely overwhelmed and their self-esteem is obliterated by this experience. What I want to say is it is not your fault. But like an alcoholic, you need to draw some bright lines. So what bright lines do I recommend? No sugar and no flour are the big two. Now, people may be surprised to hear flour, and I even include whole wheat flour when I'm saying that. And let me say why. Flour has a lot per molecule, and it gets metabolized into the bloodstream very rapidly, giving you a sugar hit and a dopamine hit that triggers the reward centers in the brain to say, oh gosh, that was good, I want more. Now, if you're not struggling with addiction, it's a completely different dynamic. Some people can have a slice of bread or even frankly a donut, and it's just fine. It's just an interesting flavor and they move on with the day. But for other people, it's not like that.
Yeah.
And it can stimulate the addictive response in the brain. And suddenly the brain feels that its survival is at stake to get more of that experience. Our brains are hardwired to do what they think is in our survival best interests and to convince us that that's what's best for us. If you want to do an experiment in this, try holding your breath for a minute. By the end of a minute, you know you're not going to die in a minute, right? No one's going to die from 1 minute without breathing. But your brain will convince you that your life is at stake. Yeah. And that it's a very, very, very bad idea to keep holding your breath. That's how powerful it is. And those aren't necessarily your conscious thoughts, but they're your brain's way of keeping you alive. And the dopamine response is similar. The reward centers get stimulated from way back in evolutionary history when sweet fruit tasted better and was riper, and bitter fruit and bitter foods were poisonous. The brain says, ooh, that's good, do it again. Well, now the food industry has hijacked this with all of the processed foods that keep us hooked on their products and keep stimulating the brain to say, ooh, that's good, do it again and again and again. So a bright line can help you break free. So we find taking 30 days with no sugar or flour of any kind can really help you reset the system. And then you can have a little bit and see, does it stimulate more desire? If so, go back to your bright lines. A lot of people who are highly susceptible to food addiction need to give up sugar and flour permanently. Yeah. For other people who it's more mild, they can just, clear it out, and then it gets easier and easier. You can have a little bit now and then, no big deal. Most people can have a glass of wine now and then, and they're not going to go on a drinking binge. Right. But for alcoholics, that doesn't work. They actually have to go cold turkey. So those are some big ones. And then processed foods in general are not your friend if you're trying to get healthier. And frankly, if you're trying to have healthy habits. So planning ahead, cooking for yourself instead of going out to restaurants, preparing your food in advance so you've got it when you need it, having backup plans, having healthy snacks on hand so you don't get stuck in a pinch, bags of trail mix, hummus with some celery and carrots in the fridge at all times. If you've got kids, plan ahead, pack up lunch before you go out on a road trip. A lot of things so you don't get stuck in a pinch and dependent on a toxic food culture for your survival.
Oh gosh, this is so helpful, Ocean. As somebody, I talk about this very openly, somebody who I've dealt with addiction with food and sugar, went to 12-step support. And even have a autoimmune condition today, which frankly, I've managed to keep at bay because of the way I've chosen to eat. And I got to tell you, I'm one of those people. and if you're listening, maybe you are too, I cannot do sugar and flour. And I want to say, I don't know what your thoughts are of this, but I probably took it to the other extent when I was trying to take out sugar. For a time I took out fruit. And what I noticed was, it's interesting. I actually just recently added fruit back, and I feel so much more alive, actually.
Yeah.
I needed that sugar. So I think I went to the other extreme, and I was operating with not enough natural sugar. And so it's finding that balance. But there's such a difference in how I feel with natural sugars, or, from sweet potatoes or from berries versus, refined sugar, which does not work for me. I always not joke, but I said, I'm like a drug addict with sugar. I really can't handle a little bit, including flour. So that makes sense to me, what you're saying.
Yeah, totally. And it's very common. You're not the only one. And here's what breaks my heart is a lot of people feel like it's their fault.
Yeah.
That they have these addictions, and there's a lot of judgment from our society.
Yep.
And when it comes to weight issues, 70% of us are overweight or obese.
Yeah.
And believe me, this is not because we don't value appearance enough.
Yeah. Right.
This is not because we live in a society where people are not sufficiently motivated.
Yeah.
In fact, the amount of pain and suffering
yeah.
around this topic is enormous. Over 100 million Americans are on a diet right now. 99% of those diets will end in failure.
Yes.
There are people are trying really hard. Can you imagine if there was a university and less than 1% of the students graduated? Would you blame the students or would you blame the university?
Right.
We are highly motivated, and yet the weight loss industry is failing us.
Yes.
It's the weight loss industry's fault. It's not people not trying hard enough. We think it's about willpower. It's not. Yeah. But when you understand how the science and the physiology and the neuroscience of habit change, and you realize that it's not your fault that you feel stuck sometimes. A lot of people end up, in the fetal position crying out to God, like, how do I do this? And feeling like their entire self-respect is demoralized. And at the end of the day, this is because they're addicted. Yeah. And we live in a society that glorifies that addiction. Mm-hmm. And that actually inundates with us. We have advertisements that are designed by some very smart people to suck us in. Yep. We have craveability experts at major food brands who are designing it so that you can't eat just one. Yeah. Which is actually a marketing slogan, right? It's very true. That's their goal. So if you're going to break free, you've got to say no to that industry and no to those influences and protect yourself like an immune system in a time of illness with a virus all around you. Yeah. And that's how I see a toxic food culture. It normalizes something that is eroding our self-esteem. It's sapping our energy. It's depleting our immune systems. It's giving us cancer. It's destroying our cardiovascular health. It's killing us. Yeah. But the good news is you can turn that around. Mm-hmm. That we have studies, for example, women who eat mushrooms daily, in one study had a 64% drop in risk of breast cancer. Mm. In another study, women who drank green tea daily had a 50% drop in risk of breast cancer. In a third study, when they drank green tea and ate mushrooms daily, they had an 89% drop in breast cancer. And so these things compound. Right. Greens, one study at University of Chicago, Rush University researchers in Chicago, they found that people who ate greens 2 to 3 servings a day, pretty good amount of greens, 11 more years of healthy brain function. Wow. When you think about how many people are suffering from Alzheimer's right now and what we would do to get our loved ones back, if any of us have anyone in that situation, and give them 11 more years of healthy brain function, we'd do anything for them. Well, guess what? Eat your greens. This is powerful, powerful stuff. Food really is medicine. So after hearing about those studies, I eat greens, I drink green tea, I eat mushrooms, and I make a lot of other choices that I think compound. And between them, who knows what's possible from lifespan and health span. But I want to find out, and I want to help a lot of people find out. Yeah.
Well, part of what I also hear you say, and this is where I'm just love what you're up to and so in alignment is, I don't watch a lot of TV, but if you just tune in and look at commercials or banner ads or whatever is going on there in the marketing world, and you tune in to what is being advertised to us, it's often the companies that have these really highly craveable processed foods that are designed to make you addictive and want more. And, like you were saying, it's not, I love that. It's not your fault. If you're someone listening and you're kind of like, gosh, I can't stop eating the X, Y, and Z, I'm guaranteeing you it's got to be processed. Because I love sweet potatoes, but I never feel like, all right, I got to have another sweet potato. I'm like, I'm good. I can't even have a whole one now. Like a half one is awesome. And I can feel, it feels different than eating a sweet potato chip, for example, which does not feel so good unless I make them.
and real foods usually require you to chew.
Yes, right.
And they may provide sweet like fruit does, but they also provide a lot of cofactors, fiber and antioxidants and phytonutrients of all kinds.
Yeah.
And when you eat those things, your body feels nourished sooner. See, a lot of people today are calorie obese, but they're actually nutritionally starved.
Yes.
Because we're not getting some of the critical nutrients we actually need to function well.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons, as well as the processed food industry's tactics. Yeah. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people feel chronically hungry, because they're actually missing some stuff.
Yeah.
And, you can pig out on broccoli and kale and bok choy. You can pig out on fruit. In one study, people could eat as much fruit as they wanted, and it didn't damage their blood sugar balance. And it actually was associated with better health outcomes. People eating 20 pieces of fruit per day actually fared better than people who ate 10 pieces of fruit per day. I'm not kidding. Now, I'm not saying everybody should be eating 20 pieces a day, but what I am saying is it seems that you really can pig out on the healthy stuff, and your body will do just fine.
Yeah.
But not so with some of the junk foods.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, because this morning I literally ate almost an entire pint of blueberries by myself. My kids were like, where are the blueberries? I'm like, you missed it. I'm going to get more, but you missed it. So I love that. Before we wrap up, I know, I love how committed and passionate you are. Goodness, we need you and need what you're doing. And I'm just curious, when you think about the future and your vision and the legacy you want to leave, like, what's your dream? How, what does that look like, Ocean? Talk about what you're envisioning and what you're committed to, because I can get a sense, but I think it's kind of fun to tap into that. Like, what would that look like?
I can answer that on sort of every level. I mean, as a soul on planet Earth, I want more love. I want more joy. I want more people living their purpose. I think we all have some reason for being alive that makes us. And if we do what we're here for, then we will be satisfied and fulfilled. And if we don't, then something will always be empty and missing in our lives. So I want to help people discover and tap into that. And I think that health is one of the helpful factors, because, they say, a man or a woman with their health has 1,000 dreams. A man or a woman without it has but one dream, just in the back, right? And so I want to help people, remove that obstacle so we can get on with the real business of our lives. I don't think health is an end in itself. I think it's a means to an end. And the greater end to me is love and service and contribution and living what we're here for. And then at a practical level, I want to help individuals reclaim their power. I want to help you to know how powerful you are and to step into that so you can make choices that are in alignment with your values and what you really want for your life and for your world. I think that in martial arts, there's this concept of center. When you're centered, then you can absorb force and you will stay grounded. But when you're not, you'll get knocked over. And similarly, I think that when we bring any area of our lives into true integrity with who we are and what we stand for, we become more potent. We become a force to be reckoned with instead of at the mercy of life. And I think that food is one of those places where when you create integration between your values and who you are, then and how you live, then your life takes on a dynamism and a power that actually ripples through every domain, from your relationships, your self-esteem, your work performance, everything you do. And then I want to make some changes in the world, because I'm sick and tired of it feeling like you've got to fight an uphill battle and spend your whole paycheck just to eat whole foods.
Yeah. And
we have some forces at work that are contributing to that. So I want to see some social and political changes, like an end to the subsidies of junk food by the taxpayers, which is we're subsidizing the wrong things like high fructose corn syrup and factory farmed animal products. I want to see an end to the marketing of processed junk foods to kids. I want to see doctors learning about nutrition in medical school. I want to see kids learning about nutrition in elementary school. I want to see healthy food served in schools. I want to see healthy food served in hospitals. I want to see subsidies for the right foods instead of the wrong foods. So we make it easier, especially for the poor, to make healthy choices. I want to see food stamp value double for fruits and vegetables, so the people who are on food stamps can be supported in buying healthier foods. We have 50 million Americans dependent on the SNAP program for their food security. Let's help those 50 million, who are also the least healthy segment of our population statistically, to make healthier choices. It will lift up everybody. It will help us cut down collective medical costs. It will make hospitals cheaper because they won't be providing emergency care to desperate and poor people. So there's a lot of steps we can take, and I want to see us implement them individually and collectively so we can get real results.
That is so powerful, and may that all come true in our lifetime. I am so with you in that mission. You know, this whole podcast is about being your youest you, your most authentic self. And what you're talking about, I believe, is also this ability when your health is in alignment with, you know, your best self, you can really show up differently in the world, and making that available for everybody, so that, you know, I love that fruits and vegetables available and you know, there for anyone who is able and wants to, hopefully everybody, to get them. It's so, so crucial. Yeah. I love your vision. Ocean, I may this all happen. I don't know what power I have saying that, but I love your dream and vision. I'm with you on that. And I'm going to make sure we have all your information, so people that are moved, they can connect with you or what you're working on, your foundation, the movement. Cause it's really, I mean, I definitely just showed again, 31-day food revolution, to start there. And we can all, I mean, I really believe each of us can start with ourselves, and then from there make a huge impact.
Yeah, we can. Absolutely. You know, they say you can make a difference. Well, that's actually not true. You do make a difference. Every bite you take, every dollar you spend is a vote.
Yep.
And you get to decide whether you're voting for sickness or health, whether you're voting for the status quo or for transformation.
Yep.
And my goal is to help you make a conscious vote that helps you create the future you desire. And if that's a healthy one for you and for your planet, then let's create a food revolution together. Yeah. And you can join in by getting 31-Day Food Revolution wherever books are sold. Enjoy it, put it to use, read it, share it with your loved ones. It makes a great gift. And, you know, I wrote it because I wanted to capture decades of hard-won wisdom and put them into one place so everyone can access it anytime or place.
Fantastic. Thank you for who you are, who you've shown up as in the world, for what you're contributing, for being here today with us. You're just a big inspiration and adding so much value. And I know anyone listening in is going to be touched, moved, inspired, and moved to action to some degree. And we'll have all the ideas and ways to do that listed below. But thank you so much, Ocean, for who you are.
Absolutely. Thank you, Julie. And thanks for what you're doing for stimulating such important conversations. It's so important. And thanks for the opportunity to share some insights with this wonderful community you gather.